So, just so you know, folks, we do record this for the purpose of uh, our podcast and stuff. So, please keep that in mind. And let me get to my file. There it is. And it's not ready to share yet, but I do want to talk about real quick before we start. Why do we do a fourth step? We do a fourth step because we got to Alcoholics Anonymous with one hell of a lot of emotional baggage. And we have been dragging emotional baggage through our lives, from some of it from childhood, from relationship to relationship. And it seems like every time that we go through something new and it doesn't work out, it compounds old emotional baggage. So for tonight's purposes, I brought my emotional baggage, which I happen to bring in. Kat, I don't know if you can see how to spotlight my screen or not, but if not, it's okay. All the rest of you can put me on speaker view. So I've got about 14 relationships worth of emotional baggage in this little bag here. Some of it's parents, some of it's ex-wives, some of it's children, some of it's old playmates and old schoolmates and all of that stuff. So I have gone through the entirety of my life with most emotional baggage. But a lot of our fourth step focuses on our relationships with others, right? Parents, siblings, all that sort of stuff. And, of course, lovers as well. So, I'm just going to use this example. My parents gave me ideas of how relationships were supposed to be, and my parents didn't do a very good job of it because they were very toxic. They were very ill people because I was born into untreated alcoholism. Kat, you can let people in the door, it'll come up on your phone. So you know, that's where my emotional baggage started. Then I got into relationships, and that first time when I was in the 7th grade and she broke my heart. Then the next one broke my heart, then the next one broke my heart, and so on. Then I got married, and it didn't work out too well. And I have her favorite picture that I've been carrying around for the last 45 years that she gave me. And then, of course, there was this girl, the one that got away, right? And here I am. What?
Need you to admit the participants.
I'm sorry, what?
You said to admit people. I don't have
Yeah, on your phone. On your phone,
Yes.
I co-hosted your phone, and it should be a pop-up.
I don't see a pop-up.
Okay, never mind. I'll take care of it. Too late to walk you through it. So at any rate, I'm carrying from relationship to relationship, and I might be in a relationship with you, but I'm still carrying stuff from her around with me. That was my last wife, by the way. And then the other thing that happens is I've been trying to live in a box that other people have tried to make for me all my life. And they've been trying to put me in a box and tell me what I should be and what I should look like and how I should act and everything. And when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, my box was full of garbage. But now that box is empty and it gets filled with goodness because of the process of taking the steps. Well, you know, most relationships, especially with the opposite sex, maybe same sex, generally starts out that something that rapidly moves us to the bedroom, right? And things don't always work out, and things are real good for a couple of years, you know. We're whining and dining and all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden we start arguing and things start getting ugly. And because of my alcoholism, not what they're doing, but because of me, things start getting uglier and uglier. And I'm getting a whole lot of anger built up in my life with this. So we're in an argument one day, and I take her favorite statue, who is now the headless statue, and I toss it across the room, right? Because this woman just ain't doing things my way. And you know, things are real good when we first get in the relationship, making whoopies real good and all of that, and then all of a sudden one of us starts stepping out of the relationship. Maybe it starts with some inappropriate magazines or calendars or whatever it may be, but it's still something that's taken me out of the relationship instead of focusing on me and that individual. And of course, then we come into the age of technology and cell phones, and now what? Oh my goodness, people can send me pictures of themselves, and I can send pictures back, and I can have all kinds of inappropriate texting and everything else. And this is another thing that has a tendency to destroy relationships. And the thing that we never ever talk about is the elephant in the room, which is my alcoholism. Because I get angry every time you say, "You drink too much. You're an asshole when you drink." I get pissed off about all that kind of stuff. So by the time I finally got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and what all these relationships have done is they have given me my favorite t-shirt, the one with the hole in the sole, you know, and every part of me is absolutely broken, and I'm shattered. There's one other thing that happens in all of this. Because of my guilt, remorse, fear, self-pity, shame, anxiety, I have this blanket. I break out the old smelly blanket and I retreat into it, and it makes me feel warm and comfortable, and it's my place that I get to live. And it's always been my comfort. I've gone to it since I was a little kid, and it has always, along with the booze or other substances, taken away the pain. So that's why we do a 4-step, so that we can learn how to be free of this emotional baggage and heal from the pain, not only that we caused in life, but sometimes what some other very sick individuals have contributed to all of that. So, on that note, we are going to go ahead and start the slideshow part of it. And let me just get to screen share. And Trish is out tonight, so the lovely Pickled Cat is doing this with me, and she will be my partner in it. And we're going to take you through the slides, and afterwards we'll be open for questions. So, take it away, Cat.
Okay, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Kat and I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to the Lppbbsg Primary Purpose Big Book Study. 4th-step workshop. Please visit our website at Lppbbsgaa.org.
Thank you. And let's open this up with the set-aside prayer, folks. God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, the 12 steps, the big book, the meetings, my disease. But most especially, God, please set aside everything I think I know about you, so that I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please let me see the truth.
And the AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problems and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any clauses. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Please keep in mind that this is a workshop. We will be discussing some real life examples of what could be difficult things for some. While questions are encouraged for clarification, we do not expect any specific discussion to encroach on topics that should be saved for your sponsor or for a one-on-one conversation. Feel free to take notes as we go along. This workshop should not be used as a platform for sharing your fifth step.
Please use your notebook to write down the slide number from the lower right-hand corner of each slide. That way we can take all questions at the end, but we'll have the slide number to refer to for clarification and further understanding.
So we need to take a look at our foundation first. So before we get into the 4 steps. So let's take a look at our triangle. And you hear people in meetings say all the time, the how of the program, the honesty, the willingness, the open-mindedness. Or you hear them say, unity, service, and recovery, but that's not how it actually starts. Recovery is the foundation. It starts at the bottom. Recovery in the mind, found in the big book on page XXV to page 164, set of 12 spiritual principles that are the 12 steps. Have you continued to actively take the 12-step progress outlined in the big book? And our traditions, unity and body, found in the fellowship, set of 12 spiritual principles found in the traditions. Do you have a group that you are committed to? Is your group committed to the 12 steps, and does the group live by the 12 traditions? And service and spirit, found in carrying the message, set of 12 spiritual principles found in the 12 concepts, applies from the group level right through the service structure all the way to GSO. Are you working with others and taking them through the 12 steps? And folks, feel free to take screenshots or hold your camera up and take a picture of the screen if you want to know what the slide has to say to go back for later reference. And like Kat mentioned, slide number is right down here in the bottom corner, right hand corner of everyone. We can always go back and elaborate on the slides if necessary.
While this is a 4-step workshop, it is always good practice to review the foundation of steps 1, 2, and 3 before beginning. Therefore, we will be reviewing some hot spots to be sure the foundation is intact leading into step 4.
Through the information we read in the doctor's opinion, along with the first 44 pages, we are given the information we need to self-diagnose our alcoholism. Only 51 pages in all lead us to this decision. This is our first step.
Step 1. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently may be, has to be smashed.
Bang! We love that slide. Being convinced, from page 60 of our book, and we look at the ABCs in just a slightly different perspective. A, am I convinced that I am an alcoholic and that my life is unmanageable? Step 1. B, am I convinced that no human power could have relieved my alcoholism? Still step 1. And C, am I convinced that there is a power greater than my own power that can and will relieve my problem? A and B. Step 2.
Referring back to the, I can't see that part, Jamie, I'm sorry.
You can't see it. Why can't you see it?
Referring back to just that word is blocked. It says
Referring back to we agnostics.
This chapter is a pathway to letting go of old ideas and old beliefs, and opening my heart and mind to finding new beliefs. This happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. They show how the change came over them.
And sorry about whatever was blocking it, Kat. I have no idea. A life based on self-will. So we're going to read pages 60 through 62, but we read it in the first person. If my arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as I wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including me, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, I may be sometimes quite virtuous. I may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, I may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, I am more likely to have varied traits.
What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. I begin to think life doesn't treat me right. I decide to exert myself more. I become, on the next occasion, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit me. Admitting I may be somewhat at fault, I am sure that other people are more to blame. I become angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is my basic trouble? Am I not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Am I not a victim of the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only I manage well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things I want? And do not my actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Am I not, even in my best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony?
I am self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. I am like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining about this sad state of the nation. I am like the minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. I am like politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. I am like the outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him. I am like the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever my protestations, am I not mostly concerned with myself, my resentments, or my self-pity? Selfishness and self-centeredness, that I think is the root of my troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt me, seemingly without provocation. But I invariably find that at some point in the past I have made decisions based on self, which later placed me in a position to be hurt.
So my troubles, I think, are basically of my own making. They arise out of myself, and I am an extreme example of self-will run riot, though I usually don't think so. Above everything, I must be rid of this selfishness. I must, or it kills me. God makes that possible, and there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. I've had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I could not live up to them, even though I would have liked to. Neither could I reduce my self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on my own power. I had to have God's help. This is the how and why of it. First of all, I had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, I decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be my director. He is the principal, I am his agent. He is the father, and I am his child. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which I will pass to freedom.
Now that the book has given us ideas that our problem is based in self, we need a pathway toward finding out what our own selfishness, self-centeredness, and fears and delusions are. This comes from the process of the four-step inventory. The first 3 columns are centered around our resentments and how they affected us. Everything after that looks at our own thoughts, actions, and patterns. This is a discovery process of who we have become.
Now, first of all, I have to quit playing God. Why? It didn't work.
Ain't that the truth? And our third step prayer, and before we go into the third step prayer, I just want, here's a consideration, folks. All of that stuff that we just read on page 60 through 62, the selfishness, self-centeredness, the fear, the delusions, all of that, is it possible that in this prayer, that is some of the stuff that we're asking God to relieve us from? So our third step prayer: God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, the victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always.
3 aspects of a relationship with God. Director, actor. A director runs the show. The actor listens for direction. On my own, have I failed to provide what I need to be okay? Am I ready to make the decision that hereafter God will direct my life? Principal, agent. An agent represents who the principal or employer would have them be. Have I failed to be the person I would have me be? And failed to make others who I need them to be? Am I ready to make the decision that hereafter I will represent who God would have me be? Father, child. A child trusts their father, can provide what they are incapable of doing on their own. Have I failed in directing my life on my own power? Am I ready to make the decision that hereafter I will trust that God will provide what I need?
Now, there's a whole lot of 4-step workbooks out there in the world that are available, folks. However, the 4-step was never meant to be a check-the-box inventory. The instructions in the book, Big Book, always say, referring to our list which we have written down in detail. And so we use a pad and a pencil, or your favorite writing utensil, but that's what we do. I love this tablet because it's got those 2 buffaloes bumping heads. That was kind of like how my whole life was.
Before I begin, I pray something like this. God, please help me see the truth about the things in myself which have been blocking me from you.
So, on page 65 in our book, we have, hang on a second, Trish, okay, I've got you co-hosted, Trish, thank you. It shows 3 columns, but right here we're going to show 2 columns for this purpose. First 2 columns, Work each column from top to bottom. List all of the names first, and then all of the causes. And the examples used in the book are, and we're usually as definite as this: I'm resentful of Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, my employer, and my wife. The cause: Brown's attention to my wife. Told my wife of my mistress. I'd be a little pissed off about that too. Brown may get my job at the office. Mrs. Jones, she's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend and she's a gossip. My employer is unreasonable or unjust, overbearing, and threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. And my wife misunderstands and nags like Brown, wants the house put in her name. And now we're going to move on to the page with all three columns.
Okay. Add the third column after completing the first two columns, working from top to bottom. The third column are the 7 areas of self, which begin on page 64. Self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook. At the top of the page, I'm resentful at. Okay, again, we have Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, my wife, the cause, and then the third column shows, okay, which area of self this resentment affects. So, Mr. Brown is attention to my wife. He told my mistress, Brown may get my job. That affects my sex relations and my self-esteem, fear. Okay, under Mrs. Jones, she's a nut, she snubbed me, etc. That affects my personal relationship, self-esteem, fear. My employer, unreasonable, threatens to fire me, etc. The third column affects my self-esteem, fear, and security. And finally, under my wife, misunderstands and nags, likes Brown, wants house put in her name. Okay, affects my pride, personal sex relations, and security, fear.
Just a quick note before we move into the next slide. A lot of people, when they do their 4 steps, that's all they'll ever do in this third column is they'll just say, oh, it's fear. Oh, it's pride. Oh, it's this or that, without getting real definite about it. And we're about to give you a way that helps you find more definition in that third column. All 3 of those columns are lies.
Feelings aren't facts, but they are valid, and we need to find out where they come from and decide what we are going to do with them.
There are people who will look at the chart on page 65 and say, this is the 4th step. However, there is more work to do. The full directions start on page 65 and end on page 71. Page 72 states, we have been trying to get a new attitude and new relationship with our Creator to discover the obstacles in our path, causes and conditions, from page 64. Without these other columns, I am missing most of the discovery process. The following slides are the rest of the process. So in just 7 short pages of our big book, folks, it gives us all the directions for taking our 4th step.
Okay, so before each 4th column, consider in paragraph form, how have I done the things I've resented in column 2 to the person I've listed in column 1 and or others? Okay, reference page 66, paragraph 4. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick, like ourselves. After considering this realization, say the 4th step prayer. Refer to page 67. This is a sick person like myself. How can I be helpful to them? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done.
Just a quick thought on the four-step prayer, or many of us refer to it as the resentment prayer. Even though it doesn't use these words, these two prayers plant the seed of forgiveness in my heart, plant the idea of forgiveness in my head, because it is literally impossible for me to be helpful to someone if I'm being angry and resentful at them. Those two spaces are incompatible. And again, when I ask God to save me from being angry, again, it is planting a seed of forgiveness in my heart. Oh, this is my page, huh? Is it
Okay.
is it your page?
No. Go ahead.
Wait a second. Let me go back and look. Yeah. Oh, no, it's my page. Duh. Okay, so at the top of every page, we write, God, please let me see the truth about who I am, my resentment inventory. This is what the first column from page 65 should look like when completed on paper. These are individual resentments. Notice there are multiple resentments per person. So we broke it down here and numbered it for you a little bit. Mr. Brown, there's 3 resentments related to Brown. Each one of them is a single resentment. We have a tendency to bundle resentments up and hang on to them, and they become like that pot of spaghetti we cooked, walked away from the noodles, and they all got stuck together. So what we're trying to do is pull one noodle at a time in order to make this work. So the 3 resentments are: 1, his attention to my wife; 2, told my wife of my mistress; and 3, he may get my job at the office. With Mrs. Jones, there's 2 related resentments. She's a nut, she snubbed me, and she committed her husband, and he is my friend. And number 3, my employer. 2 resentments there: unreasonable, unjust, overbearing. And number 2, threatens to fire me. You know, folks, when we bundle these resentments up, oftentimes we just stay mad about everything. Absolutely mad about everything in our lives. And we make things that really aren't resentments as well. You know how to explain this page, Kat, or you want me to?
If you would, please.
Okay. Hey, this is Kat's first time, and she's doing a great job, so give her a hand, everybody. So the page on the left is what it should look like filled out. We have created the same pages. We've done all the one on the right, the white one. We've done all the work as it looks right now. If you'll put your email in the chat, we've created our own workbook based on these pages that we will be happy to email out to you. So all of that, please let me see the truth, and all of that, and the directions are there. So all you have to do is basically fill in the blanks. Remember, we said earlier the inventory was never meant to be a check the box. Some inventories will have a box of a checklist of 35 things, and we go, oh yeah, that's wrong with me, and that's wrong with me, and that's wrong with me, and that's wrong with me. But this is a discovery process, ladies and gentlemen, for us to discover the truth about ourselves and not put things in there that aren't really qualified to be in there as well. So that's what we do with that page. So go ahead and you can take this page, Kat.
The 7 areas of self. The third column focus is on the 7 areas of self. These are found on pages 64 and 65 in the Big Book. Our focus will be on self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook. I ask myself, how do my resentments affect me in these areas of my life? Keep in mind, sex relations has nothing to do with the act of sex here. Rather, the focus is on male-female relationships, or a relationship with a partner of our choice. While pride is not listed on these pages, it is included in the 7 deadly sins, which is discussed in the 12 and 12, step 4, page 48. It also ties in very closely with self-esteem and gives me a different perspective on looking at myself. The 7 deadly sins are pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth.
So I know this looks really complicated, but it's not. This is our third column in the 7 areas of self. And again, at the top of the page, we have here what the 7 areas of self are. Kat just told you why pride is in there. Use 1 page per each resentment, not per person. This is an example of column 3, done using the 7 areas of self. How it should look when completed. So keep that visual in your head for just a second, and I'm going to skip back 2 pages. Oh, no. This page. This person, all of this stuff, where there's 3 different resentments here, this page that we have now just simply means that there would be 1 page per resentment. That's how we untangled the pile of spaghetti. So here again, all the other stuff is on the page except for what you as an individual need to write in. We've got Mr. Brown's name up there. First resentment, his attention to my wife. And here's the instructions for the 7 areas of self. Affects keep columns 1 and 2 in mind. So in other words, the person I'm mad at and why I'm mad at him while writing the 3rd column. All the references are on page 65. Look at the 3rd column and consider the opposite of each sentence and let the inventory reveal your fears in the 7 areas of self. And remember, I said a lot of times people will do inventory and they just say, oh, it's fear, oh, it's anger, oh, it's lust, or whatever. This is how we define it a little better. So with Mr. Brown, self-esteem, how this affects my self-esteem. How do I see or feel about myself? Well, not very damn good when I get to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm still beating the crap out of me like nobody else can. The role I have assigned myself. Sentences start with I am. For example, I'm the best husband she could ever have. Or I'm the best breadwinner there is. The fears related to that are fears of not being good enough. Or maybe he's trying to steal my wife. I felt like that before. And pride. How do I think or see or feel? How do I think others see or feel about me? The role I have assigned myself in other people's lives. Have you ever met somebody and said, ooh, I'm important in your life? I certainly have. So the example is others should or should not, others should not pay so much attention to my wife. And and the fear identified with that is a fear of being alone and a fear of abandonment. Many of us have those fears. Your page, Kat.
Okay. This is an example of column 3, done using the 7 areas of self and how it should look when completed. Consider the opposite of how I see myself in the fear columns. Okay? I can't read the very first sentence, Jamie.
Wow, I don't know why it's not fitting to your screen. Ambition, what do I want to happen here? Sentences start with I want. You got it from there?
Yep.
Okay.
Example, I want a healthy, happy relationship. I want to be left alone, damn it. Okay? The third column, being alone, losing everything. Security, what do I need here to be okay? Sentences start with I need blank to be okay. Example, I need my wife to love and respect me. I need Brown to respect my marriage. The fear identified fears, being disrespected, being unlovable. Under personal relations, my deep-seated beliefs of how this relationship is supposed to look. Example, wives trust their husbands. Friends should respect me, my marriage, and my family. The fears are not being accepted and not being respected. Under sex relations, my deep-seated beliefs of how real men and or real women are supposed to be. Sentences start with a real man and or a real woman. Example, real men don't pursue another man's wife. The fear is abandonment. Under pocketbook, affects my finances. Sentences start with no one should or shouldn't. Example, others should not go in my wallet without my permission. No one should go into my phone without my permission. Brown should not ask my wife for dinner and then ask her to pay for it. The fear would be financial security.
On the pocketbook, folks, you know, a lot of times my wife always used to tell me, "Oh, just go get that out of my purse." The truth of the matter is what was in her purse was none of my business. Not that she was trying to hide anything in there, but maybe because I have the alcoholic mind I do, if I found something I didn't like, maybe it would irritate me and cause problems. So, you know, I just, that's not something that I practice. The other thing, you might wonder why we have phone in there today. Well, you know, yeah, there might be some things on our phones we shouldn't have and so on, but I'm somebody who does online banking. I pay a lot of bills through my phone. And if somebody else gets into my phone without my permission, they could easily, if not careful, take and Venmo themselves $1,000 out of my checking account. So that would definitely affect my security. We're in a world where we're getting hacked by people all the time. So it's a reasonable idea. So this is kind of what it's going to come to you like in the workbook. By the way, you will also be getting, I think it's 13 instructional pages that tell you how to do it, 13 example pages of how to do it, and the page for yourself is pretty much a generic page, but this way you can print as many copies as you like, and of course it'll print on a white page. We didn't want you using up all of your colored ink trying to print all that yellow, because it would.
Fourth column worksheet. This is where I discover my defects of character and shortcomings. The directions are found on page 67, paragraph 2 in the big book. Use one page per individual. Resolutely look for the harms that I have done to others. List where I am to blame. This will be the foundation for my 8th step list. This form may need to be modified for institutions. I continue to recognize my own fears. The direction for our fear inventory is found on page 68.
Remember when I told you a little while ago that the form might have to be modified for institutions? That was it. Okay. And this is an example of what the fourth column page should look like when completed. This can be done in phrases, not full sentences. No need to write your entire life story here. Most of us, generally, if we're working through a resentment with somebody, maybe we haven't been real willing to look at our part. This is where we do it. However, most of us remember stuff. We didn't forget as much stuff as we try to tell ourselves. So, as we go through the fourth column worksheet, the realization of how I have done things I've resented in column 2 to the person I listed in column 1. So, okay, I was mad at you. Here's why I was mad at you. So I did this to you as payback. Right? Even though we don't always look at that. And we look at, where had I been? Self-seeking. Look around the whole resentment. What did I do? Where was I to blame? My selfish actions or activities were what? Who did I affect? Who else did I pull into this drama? I placed blame. I acted out. I called your boss to tattle. I said I was going out with my friends, but instead I was going out to get laid. Selfish. What had been my selfish thinking while I was doing the above self-seeking? So you see what's happening as we move through each one of these. It builds up to what was previous. My selfish attitudes were what? I demanded to get my own way. I was filing divorce papers in my mind while we were in bed. I had it all planned out. You were going to pay, and I was going to cut you off. We're not real healthy people when we get to Alcoholics Anonymous, are we?
Okay. This is an example of what the fourth column page should look like when completed. This can be done in phrases, not full sentences. No need to write your full story again. Okay. Where had I been dishonest? What were the lies I was telling myself that resulted in my selfish thinking above? Where was I in delusion? I could find someone better. You would never be good enough. You didn't care about me and our family. Where had I been afraid? What are the fears that drive the delusions above? I was afraid, ? I would be alone, even though I don't want you. The children wouldn't have their other parent. I wouldn't be able to pay the bills, and we would be homeless. I feared for my safety or retaliation. The above fears drive the dishonesty that results in the selfish attitude behind the self-seeking actions.
Thank you. I love that the book gives us such instruction, and this is what the results become. This is a continued example of the four-step column. Consider if there are any other fears that should be on the fear list. Consider the opposite of each fear if it applies. Add it to the list. Don't just look at the negative, also look for the positive as well. I fear being alone or meeting another abusive partner. I fear being homeless. I fear having to move back in with my parents. Been there, done that, more than once. I fear losing my job for the lies I told when I was out. I fear my truth. I fear being successful. I fear having too many friends. Let's take a look at the harms. Do I see the harm that I caused? Look around the resentments. Parents, friends, employers, innocent bystanders. Friends I complained to that had nothing to do with the situation. I have harmed my spouse and my children with my lies. I've harmed my boss by not showing up to work. I have harmed my relationship with other family members. I have harmed my credit, financial status due to my selfish actions. I have harmed friendships by complaining about my spouse to them. You know, how many times in the rooms, folks, do we hear, my drinking, I wasn't hurting nobody but me? Well, it's not exactly the truth. This gives us a way of looking at the other innocent people we harmed. It does not make us bad people. Let me repeat that. It does not make us bad people. It just means that we were sick when we were in our cups and we couldn't see the truth about ourselves. This truth leads us to freedom.
And the fear inventory. Number 1, read the big book from page 67, third paragraph. Notice the word fear. To page 68, the third paragraph, to outgrow fear. Number 2, list all fears. Make a graph of columns or use the fear inventory template. We will focus on the first column. Then we will look at each row individually. Take all of your fears inventory and make one single list in the first column. List each different fear only once in the first column. Number 3, why do I have this fear? Look all around each fear. The next slide will show how to follow the trail of fears by looking at the fears hidden behind each fear. Refer to page 68. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us?
I'm going to take the screen share down for a second. Trish, would you be so kind? And we're going to show you how the trail of fears works here in just a second. But you know what we do? What we do with fear, folks? We use it as a blanket word. It's kind of like driving in the fog. You ever drive in the fog and you can't see a damn thing, right? And you put the death grip on the steering wheel and say, oh God, just get me through this, just get me through this. Well, we oftentimes do the same thing with fear, and we use it as a blanket and we throw it over everything in our lives, right? And we're not defining what the root cause of the fear is. And then what ends up happening is we end up blanketing ourselves in that fear, and we become so overcome with those fears that generally at some point we go into some sort of form of depression or something, and then we end up hiding, and we retreat to the bed and we pull the covers over our head, and we live in those fears because we haven't had a process to work through them. So now we have a process to work through them. Okay, you can unpin me, Trish. Thank you. And we are going back to the next screen. So, here's how we find the trail of fears that are underlying what we really think fear is. I fear not being good enough. If I'm not good enough, I fear I'll be unwanted. I fear being unwanted. If I'm unwanted, I fear I'll be alone. I fear being alone because I fear the emotional pain of being alone. I fear sitting in the emotional pain. If I sit in the pain long enough, I fear I'll drink again. I fear drinking. For me, drinking is to die. And I fear dying because I fear the unknown. I don't know what dying means. I fear the unknown because I fear that there's no God. If I fear there is no God, so I repeatedly trust self-reliance, even though I fear self-reliance has always failed me. But wasn't I trying to kill myself anyway? Is this alcoholic insanity? Is this how I should think the drink through? Am I setting myself up for a drink when I am drowning in fear?
Okay, and here is the fear template. Across the top, we have the trail of fears. Okay, so the first example, this is just one example of the trail of fears. Each of us will need to follow the trail to identify our own fears in this trail. In our example, on slide 53, we will look at some repeated fears we can use as patterns in our inventory. And if you look up top, I fear being not good enough. The fear behind that fear is being unwanted. The fear behind being unwanted is being alone. The fear behind being alone is emotional pain. The fear behind emotional pain is that it will cause us to drink again. If we drink again, we will die. If we're fearing death because we have a fear of the unknown. We have a fear of the unknown because we fear that there is no God.
And some of these original fears, folks, you found in the third column while working on the 7 areas of self, because that was the foundation of many of those fears. One of my favorite pages, the sex inventory and sex ideal. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there. But above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It is so easy to get way off track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. One set of voices cries that sex is a lust of our lower nature and a base necessity of procreation. Then we hear the voices that cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think that we do not have enough of it, or it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them? We reviewed our own conduct over the years past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got this all down on paper and looked at it. And all of that is from page 68 and 69 of our big book.
Sex inventory and sex ideal instructions. The following are the directions for the sex inventory in question form, taken right out of the book. We always ask God to show us what we need to see before getting started. Number 1, read the big book from page 68. 4th paragraph, now about sex. To page 70, 2nd paragraph, would bring heartache. Number 2, pray. Make a list of the relationships in my life. Number 3, determine what can be done. Write a brief history of each relationship, including motives for getting involved. Specific sex conduct, major points in the relationship, and how the relationship ended or how it is now.
And these are those questions that I have to ask myself also from page 68 and 69. Number 4, I review my conduct and look at each relationship answering the following questions. Where had I been selfish? Where had I been dishonest? Where had I been inconsiderate? Whom did I hurt, including those we brought into our drama, including the innocent bystanders? Did I arouse jealousy? Did I arouse suspicion? Did I arouse bitterness? Where was I at fault? And what should I have done instead? The answer to the last question is never. I shouldn't have gotten involved because I can't change the past. I did get involved, and this has now become an experience of my life. Refer instead to what should I have done or how should I have behaved in the relationship. Make sure you are especially complete with this answer, since it will be used later in making my sex ideal.
Writing my sex ideal. In this way, we try to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised and loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in doing so. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice.
And welcome to everyone who just joined us. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but that is only a half-truth. It depends on us and our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done, and we have an honest desire to let God take us to things better, we believe we will be forgiven. And we will have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are the facts of our experience. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity and the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. The reading continues through the end of the chapter on page 71, encouraging us to review our work and then move forward towards amends. This also encourages us to continue to align ourselves with God so that He can remove whatever self-will has blocked us off from Him. Trish, this particular slide, when you do edits, it will need the page number from the book up at the top of it. Thank you.
The following slides are a real working example of a fourth step inventory. It follows the first person in column 1 all the way from first resentment through all 4 columns. Discovery along the trail of fears, and ending with the sex inventory and sex ideal. This takes us through the entire inventory process, starting on page 65 to the end of page 71, and completes step 4 on this one resentment.
Folks, there's a reason that we brought in a real live working resentment. While Bill's examples on page 65 are great and absolutely wonderful, we felt it was important to share with you what somebody else's inventory looks like instead of the hypotheticals. So this actually is a resentment that is worked through. And here again, columns 1 and 2 from the big book, make a list of people you have a resentment against, then lists the resentments, what the resentment is with each person. In this case, it was Dad. The cause of the resentment: he abandoned our family and left us with nothing and nowhere to go. Use the following pages to continue with 1 page per resentment. Multiple resentments would mean multiple pages.
At the top of every page, remember to write, "God, please let me see the truth." Okay. And on the left, okay, we're looking at those 7 areas of self: self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook. Okay. Again, it's a real working example of an actual resentment from the 7 areas of self. Okay. I am resentful at my father. I am resentful at him because he abandoned our family and left us with nothing and nowhere to go. This affects my self-esteem. I am not good enough for him to stick around. He loved my brother more. The fear identified is not being good enough, being alone, and abandonment. This affects my pride. No father should be angry or violent to a 3-year-old. Fathers shouldn't leave their sons. The fears are anger, violence, being unlovable, and abandonment.
And again, for those of you who have just joined us, we said earlier that we might be touching on some subjects that might be a little uncomfortable, but the reason we touch them on it is because it's the only way that we can heal from it. So while this is not a forum to start bringing stuff up in a meeting, these are things that have happened to us in our life, so this is why we do this. This is a continuation of the 7 areas of self in a real working resentment. And all of those are on the left-hand side of the page. And this affects my ambition. I want my dad back. I want to be loved by my dad. I want my dad to be a role model. The fear associated with that is abandonment, not having a role model, and not having a strong father presence in my life. Remember when I said a little earlier, folks, often we just use fear as a blanket word and don't define them, but this is a pathway to defining what so many of those fears are. This affects my security. I need to feel safe to be okay. I need to feel loved to be okay. I need to have shelter and food to be okay. Some of us have grown up through some pretty deplorable situations, so those kind of things apply. What's the fear associated with that? Fear of being homeless, hungry, being hurt, alone, emotional pain, and being unlovable. This affects my personal relationships. Real men don't leave their families. Real men support their families. The fear associated with that is being alone, not knowing how to treat others. This affects my sex relations. And you know, our parents, our grandparents are oftentimes our first example of what relationships between couples are like, right? And let's face it, sometimes we've had some bad examples. So this affects my sex relationships. Real men don't bring strangers into their homes to have sex with their families and then leave to go have sex someplace else. The fear associated with that is abandonment, sexual abuse, molestation, not being safe, fear of not knowing what a healthy relationship is. And then this affects my pocketbook. Others should not threaten my home, food, utilities, finances, etc. The fear of that is the fear of homelessness, abandonment, going hungry, not being able to pay my bills. Notice the repeated fears will be explained on another page in the fear inventory.
Okay. Looking at me now, finding our patterns, defects of character, and shortcomings. Again, these are real working examples. Okay, so the fourth column. The realization, did I repeat or develop the same behaviors that I resented in column 2 to the person I've listed in column 1 and or others? Refer to page 66. Where had I been self-seeking? I acted out to get my own way. I put unreasonable demands on my mother, father, and other family members. I knew emotional drama would always get me attention. I blamed you for my problems. Where had I been selfish? I didn't care what others had to sacrifice to please me. I constantly demanded attention. When I didn't get the attention, I accused others of not loving me. And where had I been dishonest? I would always tell lies. I would steal things. If I got in trouble, I would blame others. I had been so dishonest for so long, I couldn't see what the real truth was. The biggest tragedy I see now is I was lying to me.
And where had I been afraid? I was afraid of being caught in my lies. I was afraid that I wouldn't be loved because of my lies, and I was afraid I would always be alone and not wanted by anyone. The above fears drive the delusions that result in the attitudes behind the actions. Consider if there are any other fears that should be on the fear list. Consider the opposite of each fear also. If it applies, add it to the list. Here's an example. I had a fear of abandonment or of staying in a toxic relationship, of being alone, or filling my life with the wrong people. Fear of too many people in my life, or fear of being invisible to others. Fear of staying in a bad relationship, or fear of not being financially stable enough to be on my own. Trish, I'm going to invite you in for your favorite column.
Who says it's my favorite color? Hi everybody, I'm Trish, I'm an alcoholic.
Just because it's your column, that's why.
Well, page, not column. Anyway, so I'm glad everybody is here. And what we've done here is we're looking at all of the fears that we've discovered throughout the process so far. Over on the right-hand page, or right-hand side of each page, we've been listing our fears. And going up and down in that first column, we've listed each one of those fears just once. Not even if it's come up 3, 4, 5 times. We're only listing it in this chart once. So top to bottom, listing all the fears I have recognized and identified. These are my fears, or the fears that go along with this resentment. It's the fear that I'm not good enough, the fear of being alone, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of anger, the fear of violence towards me, the fear of going hungry, the fear of being unlovable, not having a good role model, not being homeless, and there's a whole other page there that lists them too, but we're just going to look at this one page. We're not going to go through each and every single one. So once I have that first column filled out of however many fears I've discovered, then, just like when we did the resentments, each column top to bottom, and then we work side to side. So now we're going to go across each row to see what's underneath each one of those fears. So I have the fear of not being good enough. Why do I have that fear? Or what's the fear that's underneath that fear? And that would be the fear of being unwanted. And what's the fear underneath that? And that would be the fear of being alone. And why do I have that fear? Because of the fear of the emotional pain. And why do I fear the emotional pain? Is because I'm going to sit in that emotional pain. I know that from experience. And why do I fear sitting in that emotional pain? Because it's going to drive me back to drinking. And why do I fear drinking? Because it's going to either bring me to death or to insanity. And why do I fear death or insanity? Because I fear the unknown. And I fear the unknown because I fear there is no God. And if I'm fearing there's no God, that means I'm trying to live in self-reliance. And self-reliance has failed me my entire life. And once I get to that point, there really isn't a whole lot further, that there really isn't anywhere else I can take that fear or that trail. So I'm going to come down to the second row. And the first one, and in the first column, it says being alone. But if I look along that top row, I've already looked and followed the fear of being alone all the way to the end. So instead of rewriting all that stuff all over again, I'm just going to put those X's there, which just simply means stop. I've already done this one. And I'm going to go down to the next row, the fear of being abandoned, or the fear of abandonment. Why do I have the fear of abandonment? Because I fear being alone. And now the bells are going off in my head. That's the third time the fear of being alone has come up in 3 rows. So I put the X's there. I don't have to follow that again. But because this fear has come up 3 times, it's probably something that when I bring this to my sponsor in step 5, I want to talk about this being a repeating fear. Why am I so afraid of being alone? The next row, the fear of anger. Why do I have the fear of anger? Because it's an unpredictable emotion. And what's the fear behind that? Because I don't know what I'm capable of. And the fear underneath that is the fear of the emotional pain. And then I look all the way up to the top in that same column. I've already looked at the emotional pain. I've already followed that. So in 4 rows, I've already come up with 2 repeating fears. So if we follow this process with each one of our fears, taking it as far as I know I can go. And how do I know I'm done? Because I've asked God into the process, and when I stop writing and my pen stops moving, God's done showing me what I need to see. But through the process of following this trail of fears, I'm going to find a whole lot of repeating fears. And usually those fears end up driving my behavior. And looking back, I can see oftentimes how that has happened. Next.
Thank you, Trish. Excellent. And here's a couple of more pages of just fears. So again, folks, it's up to you to find out what your fears are. So
I'm going to throw in real quick, Jamie.
yes.
We're working through the resentments and the 7 areas of self, and we're coming up with that big, huge list of fears. Could be 10, could be 15, could be 20. It varies by person, by situation. But by following that trail of fears, what I find is the fears that drive me in life usually boil down to 3 or 4. So while Jamie was talking about this is fear and that's fear, and I blanket the word fear over everything, and I don't really identify what the fear is, once I take the time to find out what the fear is and what's underneath each fear, it's really only 2, 3, or 4 fears that are my driving force. Or a negative driving force, but a driving force.
Thanks for doing that, toe tapping. Okay, Kat, you're back on, my dear.
Okay. Once again, real working examples. Okay. Sex inventory worksheet. Okay. We write the name, the relationship, Then we write a brief history of the relationship. My motives for getting involved were: she sure was cute. She was so friendly. His or her smile sucked me in and made me melt. My specific conduct in the relationship was totally self-seeking so I could feel better about myself. Others commented on my cute boyfriend and or girlfriend.
Thank you, Kat. Before I move to the next slide, for those of you who joined us after we started, if you'd like to have a copy of these worksheets that you can print yourself to do the inventory work, if you will put your email in the chat or send it directly to Trish, she will email them out to you. Again, there will be 13 instructional pages, all of what you have already seen tonight, to help you through that, plus the pages, the generic page that you can print off as many as you need. So if you got 897 resentments, you can print off 897 pages. But if you got that many resentments, you're probably going to discover your patterns in about 5 people. The major points that came up in the relationship are: I don't play with others. I always want my own way. Always sexually motivated. I want control in every situation, sexual or not. I would do whatever it took to keep you from leaving me. We would fight over spending time with my family at holidays. Religion and politics always led to more fightings and in some cases even beatings. How the relationship ended or how it is now. I walked away in anger because you didn't do what I wanted, or I acted in such a way that you would leave. I've done both of those scenarios. That way, I wasn't the bad guy in leaving. The relationship on both our parts was so sick and toxic that leaving was a means of survival. Just a footnote, after the process of taking the steps and making amends, some of these relationships have healed and have become healthy friendships. The important part is that we have taken a look and taken responsibility for our part. And I can tell you that this is absolutely the truth, because an ex-fiance of 40 years ago and I are best friends today. Okay, Kat.
Okay, look at each relationship and answer these 9 questions. Refer to page 69. Number 1, where had I been selfish? Concerned only with myself. I wanted sex all the time, or I never wanted sex. I was demanding. When I didn't want sex, I pushed you away or rejected you. I demanded unhealthy or unreasonable sex. Number 2, where had I been dishonest, deceptive, or fraudulent? I said you were the only one, but you weren't. I said I was going to work early, but I stopped to see my girlfriend first. Number 3, where had I been inconsiderate, disregard for others? I did not consider your feelings. I did not consider your plans when I decided to stay late at work and went to see my girlfriend.
Some of the things we do in our disease. Question number 4. Whom did I hurt? Look around the relationship. I hurt my spouse. I hurt our children. I hurt my girlfriend or boyfriend's children. I hurt extended family members. I hurt my relationships at work when they caught me in lies. Number 5, how did I arouse jealousy? I consistently openly flirted with others in front of my wife. I flirted with my friends' wives in front of them. Number 6, how did I arouse suspicions? Doubt about my honesty. I lied about where I was going. where I was going to be and when I was going to be home. I would constantly take phone calls and text when I was at home. I would call her house with her parrot squawking in the background and couldn't figure out how you knew I was there. How did I arouse bitterness, the deep resentment? I left our family gatherings to see her family instead. I paid her rent and neglected our family. I lashed out in anger, always defensive. But she needs me. Where was I at fault? I put my family second to her and their need, to her family and their needs. And some of these things, folks, they may not be in your history, but for some of us they are, and those are things we need to look at.
Number 9. What should I have done instead? Don't write not gotten involved in the first place. What should my behavior in the relationship have been? Make sure you are especially explicit about number 9. You will refer back to this list for writing the sex ideal. Refer to page 69. Put my family first. Been honorable and faithful. Financially and emotionally supported my family. I should have been kind, loving, and tolerant. I should have taken care of others' needs before mine. I should have prayed and asked for God's help. The harm. Write any specific harm that comes to you while writing. The realization that I have caused deep emotional wounds in my family that may never be repaired. Many of the things I did could be considered abusive or narcissistic. In my experience, I have caused unknown and sometimes irreversible damage to others' lives. Prayer. God, I ask you to help mold what the ideal relationship should be in my life, that I may be able to live by that ideal and live in healthy relationship with others. Amen.
Now that we have followed the instructions and taken a look at ourselves and our conduct, let us now turn to page 69, paragraphs 3 and 4, and refer to the instructions for finding our sex ideal. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relationship to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and to help us live up to them. Remember always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow towards it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in doing so. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answers will come if we want it.
There are 12 steps and 12 traditions for recovery. There are 11 chapters in our book. Is it possible that the chapter 12 in your big book will be your story? So, how will it read? Finding yourself through this inventory could be the beginning of your chapter 12. It is now up to you to write your chapter 12.
A 5th step note. The bottom of page 74 to the top of page 75 gives us the directions of how to choose who is going to hear our 5th step. It's suggested that we choose someone who will keep our confidentiality. This could be a priest, minister, a rabbi, or a counselor, people who are bound by confidentiality by law. However, experience has taught us the value of taking this step with another alcoholic, i.e. sponsorship. We believe that advantage is that the experience of another alcoholic knows where to direct us next through the process of recovery, we recommend that you prayerfully ask God to bring the right person into our lives to help us through this process.
We hope that you will continue to join us in our bi-monthly workshop, as this work is only a beginning into the truth about ourselves. It is our experience that when people return month after month with new questions, we all grow in effectiveness and understanding. We continue to ask God to mold us into the people He would have us be, so that we can help others to find their truth. Yours in service with love, Lppbbsg.
And the next page is blank, so ba-deep, that's it, folks. So we are now open for questions, comments, sharing experience with this. We're here to be helpful, and we want to thank you all for being here. This will also be available on our podcast through our website tonight, and tomorrow it will be on our YouTube channel. So anybody got any questions, thoughts, need any help, need any clarification on anything?
I want to thank Kat for jumping in and doing a great job.
Absolutely. Great job, Kat. Well done.
Thank you.
Someone who has recently done her 4-step this way as well.
Yes, I have.
Hi, Lisa.
I have something with the Trail of Fears. I get pretty confused with that. Like the order of the trail. Is there supposed to be an order, like how they're supposed to be put down? Or am I just thinking it through too much?
So, you want to answer that one, Trish? Go ahead.
Just see me chomping at the bit there?
No, I heard the marbles rattling while you were shaking your head.
There is no specific order for the Trail of Fears. It's your trail when you're working on yours. So,
Like I keep thinking, like, what should be yeah, I think I'm just driving myself crazy with it, you know? Like,
whatever the driving force is. One of the pages, one of the lines that I skipped just because it gets a little redundant is, and a perfect example for me is, always being afraid that I'm not good enough. But if I run into an issue at work, no matter who it's with, my automatic fear is going to be I'm going to get called into the principal's office and I'm going to get fired because I can't do my job.
Yeah.
And doesn't matter who it is, but or what the circumstances is, but if there's any problem at work, that's always where my head goes.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily is there a specific order for the fears, but I've recognized for me that a lot of my recognition of not being good enough was always in the past an excuse for me to bail and jump ship. Leave the relationship, leave the job, leave whatever the circumstances were, because I was afraid you were going to see I was a fraud. I couldn't do what I said I was going to do, and you were going to kick me out anyway, or fire me, or whatever. So it's really looking at your truth, and just one more way to look at you, and find out why do I do the things I do.
Yeah. So it's just more about finding the fear and looking at, when they keep the repetition of it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. You know, I can't tell you what your fears. You're the only one. What your fears are. You're the only one that can tell me what your fears are, right?
Right.
But That's the discovery process. So everything that we had on that were examples of what fears could be. I can tell you that in the real life resentment that we worked through, every one of those fears was real and true. But here again, you're the only one that can decide what your fears are. And there again, that pattern of fears. You see, oops, it popped up again. That's where you get to stop working through, because you know how it ends on the other side.